Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been quite a while, it's about a year since I gave an update, but there hasn't been a ton of news. But now we just went to the doctor last week and we did the blood work a few days ago, and so I have some updated results. So we'll start with the A1C. So the last time I did a video, it was in December of 2022, and his A1C then was 5.7. It was up a little bit from June 2022, 5.3. So in June 2023, it was 5.0, and last week it was 4.7. So couple of things on the A1C just to talk about the insulin needs. So last December, we were about 13 Lantus. ICRs were 1 to 17 breakfast, 1 to 25 lunch, and about 1 to 20 dinner. Right now, we're at 16 Lantus. So the Lantus hasn't increased significantly, but the ICRs have gone up a lot, especially breakfast. We're at 1 to 3 for breakfast now. It was April that he kind of jumped up significantly from like 1 to 15 to 1 to 6, and then now we're at 1 to 3 for breakfast. So he has a very high foot on the floor, dawn effect rise now. You know, I have to give him his insulin pretty much when he wakes up so he can eat. And then the lunch and dinner right now, it's about 1 to 7. Again, it was 1 to 25 lunch last time and 1 to about 20 for dinner. And it's gone gradually up over the last year, but so that's where we sit right now. And age-wise, he's about 13 and a half. So the A1Cs are pretty good, and obviously the insulin needs are, especially for the meals, are up a lot. But the Lantus is on a kilogram basis. So now he weighs 107 pounds, which is about 48.6 kilograms. And last year at this time, he was 85 pounds, which is about 38.6 kilograms. So just from June, he was 97 pounds in June. He was also on 16 Lantus. We actually went up to about 19 Lantus in October, and then he started having a lot of lows, so we gradually dialed it back down, and we're currently at 16. And he's, again, 107 pounds. So on a basal per kilogram rate, it's 0.33 now, and last year it was 0.34, and in June, 0.36. So we did the fasting c-peptide, and then so the reason I'm talking a lot about the per kilogram basal rate is because his c-peptide actually went down about 17% from the baseline of last year, and which was the same at diagnosis. So 0.41 nanograms per milliliter at last year, 0.4 at diagnosis, and then so this time last week, or a few days ago rather, it was 0.33 nanograms per milliliter. So it's gone down 17%. Obviously a lot less drop than most type 1s, but a drop nonetheless, and kind of surprising given where his basal needs are at. So I think just want to also talk about how much fasting c-peptide a non-diabetic 13-year-old has. So I'm going to link all my studies I'm going to reference here down below. So a non-diabetic 13-year-old needs about 1.75, or has about 1.75 nanograms per milliliter fasting c-peptide, and a 12-year-old is about 1.5. So this is a 17% increase in what he would have if he were not diabetic, yet his basal has not gone up at all in the last 6 months, and it's the same ratio as it was back in December of last year. Again, so 0.34 on a basal per kilogram ratio, and now 0.33, even though he dropped in c-peptide. And I think the reason he dropped in c-peptide, we got a whole panel of work done, and his vitamin D last year was pretty good. You know, we give him a multivitamin supplement so that because a lot of type 1s, his vitamin D levels are low and he is unable to retain it. So, but last year he was able to retain it. It was in the normal range, and his c-peptide levels, and I think a lot of you who are watching this will likely know that c-peptide and vitamin D3 levels are correlated, and a lot of type 1s are lacking in vitamin D. So So this time his vitamin D was low, and the c-peptide went down. So there's probably a correlation there. However, his monocytes, we did a whole panel on that too. The monocytes right after the BCG were 947, which is high. I think the high level is 900. So if you're above that, you're considered high. And then last year was dropped to 580 when he had the higher, the peptide again was maintained, but the A1C was a bit higher than it had been. It was 5.7. This time the monocytes were almost the same as right after we got the BCG. They were 935. And I think that might be the reason, even though the c-peptide dropped, that his Lantus needs are not significantly going up, and his A1C is very good. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from a research report, and I'll again link everything down below, called BCG-Induced Trained Immunity, History, Mechanisms, and Potential Applications. So under metabolic reprogramming, so this was just published in February of 2023, it says glycolysis, oxidative phosphorylation, and glutamine catabolism pathways were upregulated in peripheral blood mononuclear cells after BCG inoculation. Increased glycolytic metabolism in monocytes leads to a shift in cellular metabolic program from oxidative phosphorylation to aerobic glycolysis, and the aerobic glycolysis is the way that non-type 1s cells use energy, and type 1s use it oxidative phosphorylation, which is not the way it's supposed to be done, and that's why there's, in addition to not having insulin, that's why they can go into DKA. So it showed that BCG-induced trained immunity in monocytes was accompanied by a metabolic shift towards the glycolysis through activation of the AKT/mTOR pathway. Metabolites are not only provide substrates for biosynthesis, but also regulate immune responses through signaling pathways and gene expression. Most metabolites are important substrates and cofactors for epigenetic enzymatic activity. So I'm sorry if I butchered any of the words, but I don't have a medical background. So, but anyway, so I know in some research studies it was, so it shows that, the reason why some of the adults who were, having lower insulin needs was because cells were now, even though they don't have, obviously they need the exogenous insulin, the cells were taking up the use of the energy properly and processing it properly. So that's why it went down. So I think that is likely what is happening, because since the peptide went down. And I don't have any mixed meal tolerance peptide levels. I never had one at diagnosis. He had not eaten in 8 hours when they did the blood work. So that's all I have is the fasting c-peptide. So anyway, so yes, I'll just go through staying on the insulin needs and the c-peptide. So again, so 0.4 a year ago, 0.33 now, that's a decline of 17%. And a normal non-diabetic child or boy should have about 1.75, and last year 1.5 nanograms per milliliter. So there, I'll link that study as well below, just that shows what the fasting c-peptide levels of teenagers are by year. So okay, so I think that covers the c-peptide and the insulin needs. So so the reason why we got the c-peptide levels in the whole panel is because that he only on 16 Lantus, and overall he's about 1 unit per kilogram per day in insulin overall. That it was on the low side for his age and size. So so let's see what else. Oh yeah, so the other thing that we knew that the c-peptide levels were somewhat maintained is because he had his first stomach virus back in September of 2023, since diagnosis, since the BCG. And I know a lot of type 1s, especially with the stomach flu, will get ketones if they're not pushing a lot of fluids and extra insulin. So he never got in. He had it for about 48 hours. Never got ketones. We didn't, he drank normally, maybe a little bit extra because he, was throwing up. But never tested positive for ketones, and never had 1 unit of extra insulin, and didn't drink like an excessive amount of Gatorade or water. So that, I think, was again an indication that this peptide levels were still significant or there. So I think separately, just one other thing, the Hashimoto's levels he does. I think I mentioned in other videos, he's positive for Hashimoto's on the thyroid peroxidase antibody. He has positive for that. The other antibody, the thyroglobin, is negative. It's been negative. I think maybe one test it was positive in the last 2 years, but it's generally negative. His thyroid levels are in range, usually at the lower end of the range, but this time his antibody level went down from 16 to 12. It previously been steady at 14, so it's down a little bit. I don't know if that's from BCG or from the selenium we're giving him in the Brazil nuts, and seaweed also apparently has I think iodide that is supposed to help that as well. So I'm not sure what that is from. So yeah, I again, I'll link everything down below. I think, generally we would have obviously liked to maintain all of the c-peptide. That was a bit of a disappointment. But I think that, I think in the previous video I mentioned that most type 1s, they'll lose about 50% of their c-peptide every 6 months from diagnosis. So I think there's another study that only 10% maintain at the 2 years post-diagnosis, and now we're 2.5. So 2 years post-diagnosis, only about 10% pretty much maintain the levels that they started out with at diagnosis. I don't know if that was a study that was done with people who had been in some clinical trials, and that's why they maintained it, or they just, I know there's been the vitamin D trials going on in Miami, if it's that or if it's something else. But that's, so attributed to BCG or not, probably. I don't know if that he'd be in that 10%, if not otherwise. And again, we're 6 months past that at 2.5 years. So so that's the the A1Cs are good. The basal rates are very good, and and so those are all, I think, positive things, and the negative is the vitamin D and the loss of the slight loss of the c-peptide. So hopefully we're going to increase the vitamin D, and we'll see next time if it's maintained. The c-peptide is maintained going forward if he now has the vitamin D levels that are in range instead of low side. So I think that's going to be it for today. Happy to answer any questions. And again, I'm going to link all the research studies I referenced in the description so that you can take a look and read at your leisure. And if anybody has any further information on the monocytes and BCG, if you're more, if you have a medical background and that's something that you've studied, I'm happy to, see anything, comments that you have below as well, because again, that's something that, I'm not in the medical field. I'm not a doctor, so I'm the literature I'm not super familiar with. So anyway, I hope everybody has a good new year, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.